Hello, welcome to your online strength coach, episode 43. How far can you go? That feel when waiting for the drop. Hello and welcome to your online strength coach podcast, episode 42. Today we're going to be covering a question that was asked about 3 weeks ago, but I've not got round to answering it. That's a lie. I did get round to answering it. It was meant to be episode 37, but due to my C drive not having enough space on it, I recorded a 30-minute episode, which ended up being 9 minutes, so I lost about 20 minutes of work, which is absolutely fucking infuriating. But yeah, it's done now, so I'm going to go on it and answer this one again. Not intend this to be 30 minutes, but this one might drag on quite a bit because it's a bit of an involved topic. Although I have done a draft podcast, so I've got a good idea of how I'm going to develop this and go through. Because I don't really plan out these episodes; I just kind of go off the top of my head and just discuss. There are a couple of podcasts in the hole that I actually have to research, so I'll probably release them tomorrow, possibly, since I got a few days off, which is awesome. Great to have some time to put this shit together. So it was 2 weeks ago. So the question was from PL700 from episode 36. How far can we go? I misinterpreted his original question. His follow-up question is as follows. Thanks, Marc. Really interesting video. I think I wasn't clear in exactly what I was asking, though. What I meant from working with numerous athletes as you have, what traits, qualities, genetic factors, etc. have you identified individuals that in hindsight you might be able to apply to general population? Like, for example, myself, I've been training for 15 years. Some years were lost through injury work. How much further can I go? Are probably more relevant. If you trained a guy for 6 months, what factors have you seen in terms of how far can they go? Age development, training response, etc. Okay, so in the original podcast that I did go over, I looked at 3 different case studies of people that I've trained in the past at various levels. Case study number 1 is a scrum half who I work with, who's extremely genetically gifted for lifting, although he's a professional sportsman, so lifting is not his primary goal, not his primary target. So he only trains weights a couple of times a week, and it's not his focus. He only pays so much attention to it, and so much effort goes into it. Case study number 2 was a powerlifter, who I've been working with for a number of years now. Don't work with so much currently, but I've worked with quite a lot in the past. Who's incredibly strong, natural, not the most technically gifted of lifters, but he's strong through a mixture of genetics and work ethic and psychology. And then lifter number 3, female lifter I've been working with for about 15 months, who started from completely novice, was a late adopter, and is now like a top 6 national level lifter, and is going to her first international competition this year. So there's 3 different lifters there. The lifters are the athletes who are listening to this podcast will be able to identify who they are just from that short introduction. So lifter number 1, the genetically gifted scrum half. So this is a lifter or an athlete who I started working with 2 years ago. When I started working with him, he had a best squat of I think 170, possibly 180. I don't think it was 180, it was about 170. And within 3 months of not particularly focused or difficult training. Like, we didn't go through his technique so much. We didn't look at his loading in too great a detail. We just allowed him to lift, provided an environment where he could lift heavy or go for more reps on pretty much a weekly basis over the course of the preseason and following into the kind of first half of the season, where he was a fringe player at the time. He wasn't really getting much game time. He was like on the bench and stuff, so we could lift heavy with him during the year, and it wasn't a massive issue for his performance because he was performing at club level, which is a great step down from professional level in this country. So he went from a 170 squat to a 180 for 7 squat, and his bar speed's at like absolutely phenomenal. So for example, 2 scrum halves, the guy I'm talking about is 87 kilos, the other guy's 97 kilos. Both, one, like the 97 kilo guy looks like a genetic freak. He's muscular, he's like full muscle bellies, he's heavy, he's big, he puts on muscle mass easily. He's quite explosive, quite a fast sort of guy. So like he's got similar traits to this other guy. This other guy is a bit smaller, a bit more compact. His muscles aren't as showy. Doesn't look like a freak. Just kind of looks like a reasonably athletic person. It's 120 kilos on the bar, and we have a muscle lab on it. Or not muscle lab, sorry. We have a gym aware on it. So we're looking at the velocities. They're moving 120 kilos. So guy number 2, the 197 kilo scrum half, is moving at 0.8 meters a second, and he's got a 200 kilo max squat. Guy number 2 moves the weight at 1.3 meters a second, and if you know anything about bar speed, that is a hell of a lot faster than 0.8. That's kind of close to sort of tempo that some people might move like a clean. Maybe not a power clean, but like actually no, it would be about the tempo you move a power clean at. So it's rapid for weights, and he's got a max squat. Well, the max he's lifted is like 190 for a few reps, but he's probably got a max squat of like 210, 220. So his max squat isn't greatly heavier than this other guy, but his velocity profile is such that he just moves his weight like absolutely rapid. So this is a person who, having worked with him for 7 months, if he was to take aside and take up lifting, he could put up obscene numbers. I'm pretty sure as like a 93 kilo lifter as a natural, he could squat in the 300s, bench like 180, 190, and deadlift like in the. He's got a bit of a back issue, but if his back was stronger, he could probably deadlift in the 300s as well. So he could be like a world class 93, if not like a world champion 93, and he probably wouldn't have to work hard for it. But he's making money, so he's making quite good money doing what he's doing. So there's absolutely no chance he's going to do that. So that's a guy with like a genetic profile that you'll see maybe 1 in 100,000 or 1 in a million. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal athlete, probably the most gifted athlete I've worked with, and I've actually you do see a lot more working within professional sport, but it's certainly like lifting wise, probably the most gifted athlete I've worked with. But he's a rugby player. We're not going to see him on the platform anytime soon. And then the next guy, a super heavyweight, started working with me. Not me specifically, but my training group and myself. He was an equip lifter, and we managed to take him away from the dark side and get him into unequipped lifting. His best unequipped lifts at the time were like a 250 squat, a 160 bench press, and I think like a 280 deadlift, maybe 270. And within a year, he was squatting 300, benching 180, 190, and deadlifting like 300, 310. And currently he's squatting 320 for 3, benching 210, and deadlifting 335. And his rep PBs are obscene; like they're way stronger than those maximum lifts. There's a guy who has made some technical improvements over time. It's not the most finessey of lifters, just like brutally strong, and just has an iron back. Just goes through reps that would cripple anyone else. And like trains the next week. He's still got some ways to go on his attitude towards training, and not as in he's got a bad attitude towards training. He trains too heavy and too hard, and but he's kind of addressing that himself and starting to follow programs and kind of find his way in that nature. I'm still like for a fact natural. 24 I think now, maybe 25, and with those lifts, and weighs 135 kilos. So the strongest lifter I've ever worked with. Definitely the strongest natural lifter I've ever worked with. And like his training is just balls to the walls every week. Like he'll do workouts. For example, there was a build up for a program I did for him where he was doing that Ed Cohen linear cycle that I kind of published a few years ago. That I inferred off a post from Bodybuilding.com and got the percentages. It was off of an Ed Cohen DVD. And he was doing the 310s workout on squat, which I can't remember exactly, but I think it was like 260 or 270, maybe 260 for 3 sets of 10 on the squat. Not the greatest aerobically trained athlete. He would do a set of 10, hang out by an open window, be like kind of grey in the face. It would disappear and vomit, and he'd be gone for like 15-20 minutes. He completed 3 sets to that exact same way. He vomited after every set. Like each set's like a maximal effort. He's going through pretty much going through a Wingate test every time he does that. He does that 10 rep squat. He's getting massive amounts of lactate. He's blowing himself out and he's vomiting. And he's completing each set and completing the workload and getting the exact same effect out of it. Now, there's not many lifters I know who have the mental ability to go through that kind of training session, like on a one-off, and he will train that intensity multiple times a week, week in, week out, and somehow, by the grace of God, doesn't have a massive injury list. No doubt will have some injuries in the future, as we all do. But kind of my biggest battle with him is trying to get. I don't coach him so much anymore, but if I was coaching him like kind of a lot more like I used to in the past, that's my email notification. That's really annoying. I'll get rid of that. Sorry, my email notification, really annoying. I lost my train of thought as well. So yeah, there's not many athletes that I know that would do that like on a one-off. So he does a week in, week out basis. And if I was to be coaching him a lot more now, my biggest battle with him would be get him training to a structure that doesn't have him training to that intensity. Rather work on frequency, some maximal volume, and really just look at his technique within the squat and the bench press. His deadlift's not bad, and just get that ironed out and get that sorted. And he's still more kilos to go there. As a guy who is still natural, still fairly young, but has a fairly large training age. He's been training for like 8-9 years at high intensities. So whatever easy training response he's had left is gone. He's blunted it. So now you need to look at optimizing things like technique and accruing volume, and look at more nuanced kind of training strategies rather than just put more on the bar and lift more, because that is just... It will continue to work, but he's going to end up getting injured because he's just to a training age or a training level now. Well, that's a terrible way of going around things. And now, case study number 3 is a female lifter who started working with me. Best lifts off the top of my head were like an 85 squat in competition. I think 52 bench or 50 bench, and like 100 kilo deadlift. Done in the 63 class. And she has since then done 135 squat or 132 squat in competition, 72 kilo bench press and 135 deadlift done in competition as a total. She's done some heavier lifts in the gym than that, and her reps are probably stronger than that on bench press. I think she's probably more of a 77, 80 kilo, just that we just haven't got the taper right and haven't realised it in competition as of yet. And where she obviously has some good genetic components. She isn't maybe the most naturally gifted athlete I've ever worked with. She is certainly one of the more, she's an above averagely gifted athlete. But where her strength is her ability to follow instruction, which is it's a fucking great ability. I wish I had more athletes who were like that. She will follow programs to the letter. She pays attention to her form. She'll listen to input. She'll adopt input and put coaching cues to work. You'll get a lot of athletes who might follow the program as writ with the loads, the sets, and the reps, but maybe not listen to certain more nuanced coaching ideas or feedback on form, or listen to advice like, look, I know I've made the program, but the way you're lifting these weights, we need to lessen the loads because we need better execution within this program. She's engaged with the coaching process very well, and obviously she's not completely, she's not ungifted as an athlete, but she's not, I would say, not as gifted as the other two athletes that I've spoke about in the genetic front, and don't take that as a front if you're listening. But she's followed things to the letter, and she's come on hugely in the last 15 months, and she will continue to progress. Obviously her progress will slow, but I don't see there's any reason why in 2-3 years she can't be competitive on a world stage, like a top 10, top 5 kind of lifter. I don't see that as being an unrealistic goal, and it will take time. And where I think she will be good is, as long as I get the coaching right and get the programming right, is she will continue to progress, whereas someone like athlete number 2 progresses slowed to a crawl, because they're still trying to find their way training wise to kind of better eke out what's left of them. So those 3 kind of different case studies, and they're all nowhere near spent out, but number 1 has an absolute ridiculous amount of strength still left to give, probably without too much training. Number 2 has more strength to give, has realised their genetic potential probably, or their easy response probably. They're not as genetically gifted as number 1, but they're still they're still on the very high percentile of the genetic propensity for strength adaptation. They're a quick adapter, but they've kind of blunted their adaptation from their training history. But through their psychology, they've managed to get a very highly elite level of the lifts. So some of the lifts he done in the classic were junior world records, but obviously they're unofficial junior world records because they were done at a national level meet. But that's a world record level athlete who's got there from their level of development, almost through willpower, not through smart programming or good technique. Let me assure you of that. And then athlete number 3 is kind of an upper, a higher level national athlete, and within a smaller country is an international class athlete. Over a 15-month period from a novice to that level in 15 months. Now, a lot of that's down to powerlifting not being the most populated of sports, but there's still high level achievers in our class, and I don't think it's out of the question that she could get to around that level of development, as long as we continue the kind of process that we've been building of a smart coaching process, good technique, good programming, and slow and steady progress. There's no reason in 3-4 years. She's not blunting her training response. She's still got a lot to give in that. She's a pretty good responder as well. Like I said beforehand, an above average genetics, probably a lower upper. If we give it a percentile, that's probably a good thing to do. Let's say athlete number 1 is in the top 1 percentile. Athlete number 2 is in the top 3 percentile. And athlete number 3 is in the top 90 percentile, or top 10 percentile of genetics. You'll probably find that the encatchment for people that get into powerlifting or strength sports, most of these people are probably within the top 30 percentile as responders to strength training. People who are in the bottom 30% percentile are genetically predisposed more to kind of ultra endurance or high endurance events. They'll be quite light naturally, fit naturally, have a high percentage of slow twitch fibers, and they won't enjoy lifting generally because they'll be shit at it, and they'll have to work incredibly hard to be less shit at it. Whereas the people that get involved in strength sports tend to be naturally quite good at it and can tend to be fairly easy responders. They tend to pick it up somehow, and they find out, oh, wait a minute, I'm actually quite good at this. I'm getting stronger at the bench press quite quick. I'm getting stronger at the squat quite quick. I like this. I'll go for it. They tend to be your more huskier kind of people. You kind of your meso-endo kind of the Samara types. So after those kind of 3 different case studies, then if I look at myself, I've been training probably 11, 12 years for strength. Still natural. I've eked out all my easy gains pretty much within the 3 lifts. I've done bodybuilding training for the first couple of years. Then I did just kind of similar to case study number 2, where I was doing the rep out training, just training as hard as I could. I did that for 5-6 years. Got fairly good progress on it, but kind of plateaued a lot. Then did a similar kind of training, but with powerlifters, so I got another kind of spike in strength. And then I've kind of sat similar kind of strength levels, and from paying more attention to programming and more attention to like frequency and volume accumulation and submaximal volume accumulation and the actual execution of lifts, I've managed to start progressing again. My squat's stronger than it's ever been, my bench press is stronger than it's ever been. I'm still working out deadlift, but I'm fairly confident I'm going to get there with enough kind of trial and error. So I'm still not tapped out, as it were. I do think it's until you actually hit your kind of testosterone peak genetically, and you start, like, you go through that natural aging process, that maturation process where your natural testosterone production kind of tapers off, and you just physically can't put muscle on or respond mechanically to strength training in the same manners as you could do as a younger athlete. Until you hit that age, and there's different ages, it's going to be late 40s, early 40s, mid 40s, depending on who you are and what your training status is. I don't think there's anything to stop you progressing at all. Like, you're going to progress very slowly at some stage, but there's always things you can do. You can, like, if you don't wear a belt, you can wear a belt. If you don't wear an if you don't wear sleeves, you can put new sleeves on. You can get better technique. You can look at better training methodologies. You can look at different training methodologies. There's always things you can chop and change to get better. The things that are going to stop you realizing a better strength is your training history. That's a big thing. If you have a good training history, as you've started at an early age, had a good training literacy, so you've done separate sports, you've done gymnastics, kind of proprioception sport, you've done maybe at a certain age you took up weightlifting, and then after weightlifting you decided to go into powerlifting. Like, if you have a good sporting background, a varied sporting background, combined with like gymnastics and like weight training from the age of about 8 to about 15, and that athlete has realized a strength window that you'll never get again. Those younger ages you can develop massively strength wise. So you'll see lifters like Tia Tao, the Chinese weightlifters. I think he's an 85 kilo lifter now. There's a video of him squatting 270 for 6. The guy's like 19, 20. You're not going to realize that strength unless you've done his training history. You've had that training history. You've had those coaches. You've had that time. You went through that. So training history, sporting development, especially through that crucial window of your early adolescence, is a huge limiting factor. Then how you blunt your response. So if you're like case study number 2, where you've done high threshold training or high response training, where you've just tried to go heavier, more reps, week in, week out, that kind of lifter will blunt their strength training. I think they'll handicap themselves ultimately training like that, because they make aggressive gains quickly, which kind of blunts your training response. Strength training is a dose response relationship. It's like doing any kind of drug. Like, there's a way of dosing it to prolong its usefulness, to prolong its shelf life. So if you train within a good training system, So you've had Boris Shilko as a coach, or you've got a good powerlifting coach like Dennis Wolf. They are going to help you realize better progress in the long run, and you'll be a stronger lifter at the other end of that process, because they'll tweeze out adaptation in a systematic manner, and they'll prolong that kind of adaptation window where you can get stronger for a longer period of time, and you'll be technically more efficient. So that kind of the coaching history is a huge limiting factor for most people. If you get a good coach at an early stage, you can go far further within the sport. Genetics are your ultimate limiting factor. Fuck all you can do about that currently, other than taking steroids and whatnot. But obviously we're not going to do that. But yeah, if you want to go down that route, you can, but you're still going to be there's still a limit there. Not everyone takes the same dose and gets the same response out of it. Some people are just developed to be good strength responders. So genetics are a huge factor. They're probably the biggest limiting factor. Age you take it up is a factor. If you take it up and if you take up weightlifting in your 50s, you're never going to be as good as you could have been. You take up powerlifting in your 50s, you might get to a percentage of where you're going to be. Like, certainly you can be a better powerlifter having not touched the barbell in your 50s than you can a weightlifter, because weightlifter's speed and suppleness, which are a couple of the first things to go with age, whereas strength will stay with you pretty much till you're in the grave if you keep training it. So those are obviously limiting factors as well. Nutritional status is a small limiting factor. It's not really a huge limiting factor. I don't believe being massively heavier is going to make you much stronger. It will make you stronger in lifts like squat and bench press, but it'll be your detriment in lifts like deadlift eventually. But I think you can probably be within 90% of, like, for example, I think I'm probably naturally a 97, 98 kilo person as a lifter, as a kind of soft lifter. If I was to be lean, I'd probably be 89, 91, something like that. Like pretty lean. But I'm currently 112, 113. I'm lifting within personal best, but I've lifted within that level at 97, 98, within like 10 kilos of the current level I'm lifting at like 15 kilos less body weight. If I was to go like 130 kilos, I don't think I'd lift a hell of a lot more. I might bench press like 230, whereas like as a 110, I might do 220 maybe as like a lifetime best. I might squat a bit more or whatever. But yeah, we're not talking huge gains here. We're talking like 5 to 10%, and the life cost of that gain is probably not worth it in my opinion. So body weight's not a huge factor. Yeah, so hopefully that's give you a bit of an insight into what is like a very complex topic. Ultimately, where you've got to in 2 years of training probably shows you how far you can go. If you've been training for 2 years as a 93 kilo lifter and you're benching 110, squatting 150 and deadlifting 180, and you feel like those are difficult lifts, then I've got bad news for you, buddy. You're not going to be world champion. Within that same time frame, if you've squatted 220 and benched 170 and deadlifted 260 and your training's been shit, then you've probably got a bit of potential there to go fairly far within the sport of powerlifting. Okay, hopefully that answered your question. This is probably going to be longer than the last podcast. Nah, it's a bit less though. There's 28 minutes. As always, questions, comments, please leave them below. I'm kind of running out of, but I'm running low on material here, so more content would be decent. Spread the word. I'm going to be releasing this on iTunes fairly soon, I think. I've set myself the target of 50 podcasts as the threshold. So when I get the 50 podcasts, I'm going to be releasing them onto iTunes. I'll just be releasing them to whatever the threshold is. So if there's only 25 podcasts, for example, on an iTunes feed, that's the amount I will release. And I'll be asking for some help on that. I'll be asking for people to share it on social networks to hopefully get a fairly high rating within the iTunes store, so we can start kind of snowballing this content, because I would like it to get to as much people as possible, as you can probably imagine. Any comments, questions you'd like to email rather than post publicly, the email is speedpowerperformance@gmail.com. Come visit us online, castironstrength.com, onlinestrengthcoach.com. Online Strength Coach is still a shell, work in progress. Cast Iron Strength is the blog, it's the forums, get you all on the forums, keep a training log. You can catch me on Facebook, Natty Gains is my personal Facebook. Or you can catch me at Cast Iron Strength on Twitter or Facebook. YouTube is obviously this channel, so cheers for checking it out. Like, subscribe, share, all that shit. I've been Mark. I'll leave you with post-drop KDV, and I'll catch you probably tomorrow or maybe later on today for a double header. Bye.